Welcome back to Exceptional Undergrads, a podcast where we interview successful students and explore how they achieved success at such a young age. Be sure to check out our show notes at exceptionalundergrads.com for all resources mentioned in the episode today. Today, I welcome on Becca Segal to the show. Becca is a current junior at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, studying history and global studies with a business administration minor. She currently serves as Vice President of UNC Student Government, co-chair of the Renewable Energy Special Projects Committee, and the president of the Daily Tar Heels Board of Directors. She enjoys being involved in student organizing and university policy and plans to pursue an MBA following graduation. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Becca Segal. Becca, welcome to the show. I'm happy to have you here.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
I'm very excited. Would you like to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what you've accomplished recently?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Becca Segal. I'm a junior at UNC Chapel Hill, and I'm double majoring in history and global studies with a minor in business administration. And I'm originally from Raleigh, North Carolina, so very much in the area, about 30 minutes away from where I go to school. And I love UNC. And a huge part of that has been being really involved in extracurriculars. So a few things that I'm currently involved in: I'm vice president of UNC Student Government. I'm president of the Daily Tar Heel Board of Directors, and I'm co-chair of the Renewable Energy Special Projects Committee, which I can speak to in a little bit more detail later on. But I would say sort of the defining factor of my time at Carolina thus far has been finding these really passionate communities in a lot of causes that I'm really excited about. And beyond all of that stuff, I just love being at UNC. I love getting to hang out with my friends. I think it's the best campus in North Carolina and probably in the entire country. And a huge part of that has been all of the leadership opportunities that I've had here.
The UNC pride is rolling really hard right now.
Yeah.
I like to hear it. I like to hear it. I will say though, I mean, going to a school in North Carolina, High Point, I mean, I chose High Point over UNC, so I think it might be a little bit better. Maybe
Yeah.
not basketball, but
I appreciate your perspective on that. I appreciate that.
I have been to UNC football game and it was cool, so I'll give you that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, well, let's dive in and be a little bit more serious here. I liked the intro and I want to dive in on a little bit more of your experience so far, especially around campus. First off, I noticed you might not have mentioned it or not, but you started or you co-founded a company called Water. Am I saying that correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. Would you like to tell us a little about the experience that you've had co-funding this venture and some of the stuff that you've learned?
Yeah, so I actually co-founded Water in 2017, so that would have been my sophomore year of high school. I co-founded it with a really good friend of mine, Nikki Villas-Boas, who is a senior at UNC. And the idea originally came from Nikki and her mom. So Nikki and I have both been competitive swimmers for most of our lives. I don't swim anymore, but I swam competitively starting in middle school. And Nikki and I sort of had this shared experience of realizing that there were these women who were really excited to compete at a high level, at a high intensity, whose needs weren't necessarily being met by all of the stuff that was available on the market for young female swimmers. So Nikki reached out to me our sophomore year and she was like, "Hey, I'm really excited about this idea, and our school is having a pitch competition." And at this point, Nikki and I had been friends for a while, and we were swimming together. And I was really excited about what she was thinking about. And essentially, what the company is we produce a line of almost boutique swimwear for competitive female athletes. So we've worked with triathletes, we work with long distance swimmers, we've worked with a few swim teams to provide a specific line of clothing and attire for women when they're in and around the pool. So we're not as active anymore after the pandemic. Honestly, it was just difficult to get back on our feet. But we were really active with it for at least 4 years. Nikki and I went on a bunch of podcasts like this one. We did a pitch competition, which was really cool. We flew out to California and did a pitch competition. And I think part of what made that experience so exciting is we were, how old are you when you're a sophomore? Like 14 years old, 15 years old. And we had this idea that we were really excited about, and people were returning that energy tenfold. So I got to meet a ton of cool people who were working in this sphere that felt very unattainable in this like very intense corporate business entrepreneurship area. And I think that energy was pretty foundational for me when I was in high school.
That's inspiring. So you flew out to California for the pitch competition. I'm assuming that that was a quite the interesting experience. You're from North Carolina, so all the way across the country. Was there anything that stuck out to you there that you learned, or might have been just very interesting?
So the show so we did the pitch competition at our school, and then Nikki and I got second place, and I think we got like $250 or $500 or something, and we put all that into our Kickstarter. So we ran a Kickstarter early for the business, and then we like applied to a bunch of these shows. We applied for Shark Tank, didn't get on Shark Tank, and then we got on this show that was kind of like a Shark Tank knockoff. I don't want to say that, but like a a similar Shark Tank type of show. And it was honestly just bizarre and inspiring. I know I've said that already, but just we were around all these other people who were pitching these ideas that they had spent all of their time and energy on, who were filling these like really niche, under recognized needs. So that was really cool. Um, I think something that stuck out to me was just how willing people were to take us seriously. I think that was really exciting. It was one of those shows where we said like we're seeking $150,000 for 10% equity. And imagine you're, 40 or 50 years old, you've made your career, like you're an incredibly successful business person, and these two girls from North Carolina like walk on the set. They're like, we're looking for, whatever we asked for in exchange for whatever percent equity. But they took our idea really, really seriously. And I think that was incredibly rewarding, just to show that if you came to these types of things, you were prepared, you were excited, and you could communicate that other people were willing to buy in.
That's powerful. Very inspiring, especially at a young age as well, to take that initiative to go out and be not only put pitching in these competitions, but doing really well in them, getting taken seriously. Sure, that's it's very inspiring. I want to transition over. You mentioned a ton about UNC and you're highly involved on campus. Tell me about a little bit tell me a little bit about how you got involved on campus at first and then walk me through some of the positions that you're in right now.
Yeah. So I definitely showed up at UNC eyes wide open. Didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted to study, of what I wanted to be involved with. I also took a gap year. So I graduated high school in 2020 and then took an entire year off between my senior year of high school and my first year of college. So I think that was like an interesting perspective, especially because I finished my senior year in COVID, and then all of a sudden I was essentially a functioning adult, right? I had no school for the first time in my entire life, in my life that I could remember. So I showed up at UNC, and I just wanted to be around people who were excited, like excited to be at UNC and who were really willing to buy in. And I think I got pretty lucky to meet some really wonderful people early on. I had a friend who was applying to be a part of UNC student government, and I was really excited about it. And I was like, okay, if you're going to do it, I'll do it too. So I applied as a freshman. I want to say the August or September of my first year at UNC. And I was the executive assistant to the chief of staff for UNC student government. And it was just like this whole world had opened up. And I think it's sort of this level of academia and university policy that most students don't get an opportunity to see because a lot of it is kind of behind closed doors. So I started there and I really, really enjoyed it. And I was thinking about what I wanted to do for my sophomore year. A position opened up in the vice president's office, and I was like, oh, perfect, I'll go do that, look at some different work. And so I was chief of staff to the vice president my sophomore year. And then my junior year, the way it works at UNC is the president runs for student body president and then gets to choose all of their like executive board staff. Um, so the president elect and I had a conversation, and he was like, I would love to have you come on as my vice president. And I of course said yes, because I mean, how much fun, like I already loved student government so much. And so any way to get more involved, I was very much looking forward to. So I currently serve in that position. I'll be in that position until April. And yeah, in my capacity as vice president, I get to do a ton of different things. I work with our external appointments. So these are kind of like, if you think of presidential appointees in the real government, that's essentially what my job is. So I oversee around 100 different folks and appointments to like boards and advisory committees around campus. So that includes like the campus health student advisory board, the campus dining services board, and a bunch of other things. So finding students who are really interested in kind of niche policy areas and connecting them with the faculty and the professors who are doing that policy work. Um, I also work with our chancellor, with the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and the provost. to chair an advisory committee with all of them, to connect students with high level administrators, and just really like workshop policy. So I think that's what student government has taught me is I love the programming and I love events, but it's really the policy stuff that I get excited about, which I don't think freshman year me would have believed at all because it sounds kind of boring, but it is. It's really enjoyable, and getting to work with administrators who are looking to engage with students is work that I really enjoy. So that's student government. I'm gonna sort of like walk through the three things that I've mentioned, but yeah, so that's student government. I think everyone should get involved with student government just to I think it helps you understand your university a little bit better. And then I am also president of the Daily Tar Heel Board of Directors. So the Daily Tar Heel, it's the greatest student publication I would say in the world, but it is our student paper. So it's run by students, overseen by a student editorial staff, and they cover everything at the university. They talk about wider issues in the world, and they do a lot of really, really good work on North Carolina issues, and especially like Orange County and Chapel Hill issues. I can't write like that though, so I decided to look to the other sort of side of that operation. um, and so I had a friend my freshman year who I met who was serving as the then president of the board. And he mentioned that they were doing another application round. And so I submitted my application, did sort of the interview process, and was brought onto the board. And I was so in over my head because I don't have any sort of financial background until like I just started my business minor this semester. So I'm taking business school classes for the first time, which is unfortunate because the function of the board is to review the budget on a monthly basis. So it's purely financial, purely like getting in the weeds there. And so that was another learning on the job experience. But I really enjoyed it, making sure that the Daily Tar Heel as a nonprofit can function, can do all of the things that it needs to do in order to support student journalism. And then in terms of leadership, we have 5 student members and we function like a nonprofit board. So you sort of cycle through leadership. So I was a student member my freshman year. Last year, I was our secretary. I'm president this year, and then I think next year I'll be back to being a board member. So, sort of cycling through, building that community, reviewing the Daily Tar Heel in the most minute detail to make sure that all the financial stuff is working, so that the people who know how to write can kind of like do their job. That's our purpose. But I really enjoyed that, like a different side to the Daily Tar Heel, which I really enjoyed, and I think has sort of helped me refine my focus for post grad stuff. And then the third thing that I do, and the thing that I mean, don't tell the other two things, but the thing that I like the most is RESPC, or the Renewable Energy Special Projects Committee. I love this organization. So essentially, what we do is every year students pay their tuition, and $4 of their tuition goes towards RESPC. It's called the Renewable Energy Fee, and our organization is in charge of overseeing the allocation and like investment of that money. So we have an annual budget of around 210,000, but changes year to year based on how many students are enrolled, and just sort of needs of the university. But this group of students, it's like all environmental studies, environmental science, business people, and we take this pool and we spend it on behalf of the larger student body. So we have to spend it on energy efficiency, renewable energy projects, and energy education. And there's like it depends on the week. Sometimes we have 15 people show up, sometimes we have 40, but we work in project groups. There's like 8 project groups, and they're working on things like giving students scholarships so they can get certifications to go and work in green energy after graduation, to putting on like a 600 kilowatt solar system on one of our student gyms. So there's this really wide spectrum of students who basically have this like unfettered access to university funding for this really, really great cause. So yeah, I don't really know how it happened, honestly, like that I've ended up involved in these three very different, very distinct organizations. But I do think the thing that runs most clearly between all of them is that the students who are involved in them have a very specific aim and a very specific goal. And they found the place at UNC that enables them to do it, through university systems, through university support. That was a lot. I can talk about any more of those in a lot more detail.
I really want to hear a little bit more about the Daily Tar Heel Board of Directors position that you have, because I feel like it almost seems like that one could be potentially challenging for you, because you said you're just now starting to take business classes. You haven't been able to do that. Apparently, I get a thumbs up on the
That's
video.
awesome. Second one too.
And number two, you said that you are not the best writer. And I know you don't have to do a lot of writing, but I saw that. I was like, she must be really good at writing being on the board of this. And that's not the case. So are you just kind of jumping in head first to opportunities and sort of going for it? Have you always been like this?
I would say yes to the last question. I would say yes. I've always been a yes person. It's kind of ironic. But I think that when I have the opportunity to do something cool or interesting, like anything that it all makes me excited, I'm gonna say yes 99% of the time. Because it's just fun. It's just fun. And I think it makes every day a lot more exciting, which sounds, I don't know, maybe a little bit romanticized. And I think a big part of what incentivizes me to do that is having people that I really look up to and respect and figuring out who those people are and what makes somebody someone that I want to emulate and seeing what they're doing. Like seeing the person who was president before me in the role and really respecting him and seeing what he had done made me excited to do the same job. Um, and then in terms of the writing stuff, okay, I don't want to downplay it. I'm like a history major, so I do have to be really like I have to be good at writing, but I'm not an editorial writer. Like I have a lot of friends in UNC's Hussman School, so our journalism school, and they are doing like nitty gritty editorial style writing. Like I'm sure the kind of stuff that you had to learn, and I just don't have the technical skill for that. Um, but I think a big part of how we function is like we are a nonprofit board, and so our role is not at all to oversee what the editorial staff does. So it's this trust, this assumed trust, I think, that everyone on the editorial staff is going to do what's best for the Daily Tar Heel. And I think they're trusting us as the board to not mess with that. And so I think sort of like respecting those boundaries is important, and figuring out that I wanted to do the board side and not the editorial side was important. Also, couldn't do student government and also write for the Daily Tar Heel. So kind of a double whammy on that one, just because the Daily Tar Heel covers student government. And so it was like, if I can do the board stuff, I'm not touching any of the editorial stuff, avoiding the conflict of interest.
Ah, there you go. Nice. So what's the next position that you're going to try and go after here outside of them? Because, I mean, you love jumping into things, clearly, especially at UNC. So you've got another year left after this. So how are you going to go out with a bang your senior year?
Jack, I think I'm gonna go out with a bang by having a really good senior year. I think that this is sort of something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and something that I would love to talk to you about more, is in being so involved with all these organizations on campus, definitely dealing with a level of burnout that I've been working really hard to sort of reconcile with this semester in particular. So, the next step in student government theoretically would be to run for student body president. And I had to have a really long sort of like sit down with myself and also with people that I trust and respect and who like are very straight up with me. Um, to just realize that that isn't the right choice. And I think that was really hard. Like that was a really difficult decision, especially being a yes person, a consistently yes person, to say no to something like that was really pretty tricky. So I think I'll keep doing the Daily Tar Heel Board of Directors stuff. I'm going to keep doing RESPC, and I'll be in student government either in an advisory capacity, or more informally, just sort of like helping the next vice president do this job and do it well. I think there's also something to be said about sort of letting new students into spaces that you've been in for a really long time, especially because like I want to have a senior year. This is my last year as a student. Um, I'm planning to work as soon as I get out of UNC, whatever that might be. And so I think sort of taking a year to refocus and recenter on what I want to do and who I want to be once all of this stuff is over, which has been hard. So if you have any recommendations for, for sort of how to grapple with that stuff, I would appreciate it. But yeah, I think honestly figuring it out. I'm considering studying abroad. I feel like there's so much to do now that I'm sort of stepping away from this stuff that has really defined the past 3 years.
Where do you want to study abroad? Do you have any places in particular?
I don't know. I really want to be fluent in Spanish, and so I've thought about Spain.
Ooh.
And then I would really love to be in like Argentina or Chile. I think would be really cool. Um, but yeah, I'm still sort of checking it out. Do you have thoughts?
High Point has a program. It's called a Maymester program. So
Mm.
we finish our semester and then we have an extra month that you can go out to some random place. So I've been thinking about a lot of that stuff. A buddy of mine, different school, he was actually on the podcast. He's from Arizona State. He is in Spain right now for the entire semester. I feel like that'd be kind of cool. I mean, I've started to learn Spanish a little bit more. I learned it throughout, not like fluently or anything, but I took classes in high school and whatnot. And I kind of want to challenge myself. So I've been learning Spanish right now. I also started learning Japanese because it's like crazy far away from English,
Whoa.
which is insane. I'm not good at that. Not very good. Very basic. I'm talking Duolingo right now,
Uh-huh.
but I feel like moving out of the country for a little while just to go to like Spain or something. Honestly, I feel like Spain would be cool just because I don't know. It's just like Spain. I don't know, especially with the Spanish. But I don't really have too many reasons for a lot of the stuff. But I would definitely. I've heard from people who have gone to Spain and are currently in Spain now that it's pretty cool. So maybe Spain. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll let you know once I make the choice. I'll come back and I'll tell you how it goes.
Perfect. We'll just do a full other episode. It'll be like Becca's going to Spain. There we go.
Yeah.
That'll be the full
Yeah.
episode. I'll clip this and I'll play the clip and I'll announce it
Oh
down the
good.
bottom.
Oh good.
That's what
I'm
we'll do.
excited.
Should be. All right, let's zone it back in a little bit more. I know we mentioned it a little bit whenever you started the business in high school, but besides starting this business in high school, water, what else were you doing during that time compared to we'll start what were you doing at that time and then tell us a little bit about how it might have compared to what you were doing now in college.
Yeah, so I was swimming, hence the swimming business. But I would say my super cool activity in high school was speech and debate. Huge, absolutely huge. Also one of the biggest fights that I ever got into with my mom because I was adamant that I was not going to do it. My older brother, he's 2 years older than me, was just exceptional at debate. He was like known in North Carolina for his congressional debate skills. And I was just convinced like that's not my thing. But my mom was even more convinced that it would be my thing. And I'm so grateful for her for putting me in debate, for keeping me involved with it. My dad as well. They were just both incredibly persistent in ensuring that my siblings and I could, I think, essentially articulate what we were thinking and formulate arguments and sort of have logical thought processes, which, freshman year me in high school hated and did not want to do. But I did that pretty intensely throughout all of high school. So I would swim during the week and then have debate competitions on the weekends. And I did extemporaneous debate. And sort of the way that that works is you have every round is like a theme. So your round might be Europe. And then you walk into the Europe round, pull 3 questions pertaining to European current events, and then have 30 minutes to write, research, and prepare a 7.5-minute speech responding to that question. Um, so when I was in high school, it would have been like, what will be the largest economic ramification of Brexit? So it was very cool Saturday activities, but I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. I ended up falling in love with it. I did it all 4 years. I was co-captain of the team my senior year with a still really good friend, Will Aarons. And I think that probably was the most important decision that my parents made for me in high school, but also just sort of the most important turning point in high school was just learning how to research well, how to argue well, and how to be more articulate. It's a thing I'm always working on. But I don't think it's a thing that I realized the value in until much later. Like it wasn't until I came to UNC and could apply a lot of those skills to like writing papers, to doing really concise research, to speaking in class. And I think a lot of that sort of gave me the confidence to get involved in these things, to speak up for myself, to advocate for myself. Um, Other than that, in high school, I grew up in Raleigh, so I was, hanging out at Crabtree, hanging out at Park West, like doing very, very typical North Carolina high school things. I think not like the busiest place to grow up, but really, really wonderful. Yeah.
Did you have any challenges that you experienced in high school? And I want to come back to some of the debate stuff, but I just
Yeah. Um, well, I think within sort of the realm of debate, it took me a really long time to take myself seriously. I don't always know how I come across, but like I can come across as pretty lighthearted. And I think that it took me a really long time. to look at a lot of the people who I saw doing really well in debate and see myself as somebody who could be that person. And I think it goes back to the same thing of like my older brother was incredibly competent. He's also like a guy in these events that are typically won and dominated by men, at least they were when I was in high school. And so I think that was something that I spent a lot of time working on, sort of like the confidence to trust myself and to think that I could be good at something like debate. So I think that was sort of more of like an overarching thing. And I think also in high school generally, like I was just like surrounded by a lot of really smart people. I was in like a pretty intense high school environment. And I'm so bad at math and science. I'm so bad at those kinds of things. And I felt that I could do all this stuff, but I just like wasn't always getting the results that I wanted. Almost failed freshman year math. And I just was sort of like figuring out what I was good at, feeling like I knew I could be good at something, but having a hard time defining that. So I think that was definitely tricky in high school. And I think it took a lot of encouragement for other people before I was able to start seeing that in myself. Still working on that. But I think that was sort of a theme throughout my time in high school.
How'd you really start to figure out what you wanted and what you were good at in high school? And even like you just said, you're still working on it now. Is there any sort of habits that you might do weekly or monthly or something that kind of pushes you outside of your comfort zone or makes you think a little bit more critically about what your actual desires are?
I think part of it is learning to take yourself seriously. I'm not good at that. And I think that that's a thing that can be tricky, especially when you're a young person in a lot of these spaces. I think everybody talks about this, but imposter syndrome is like a very real thing. When you're in rooms with people who've been doing the work that you want to do for years, it can be really hard to take yourself seriously. And if you're not going to take yourself seriously, nobody else is. And so I think one thing that I've done that I think is a double-edged sword, but I've started taking individual meetings incredibly seriously. So part of that has been like doing a lot of prep work on the front end. Like before I have a meeting, if I have a meeting on Thursday, spending time on Wednesday to be like, this is a serious thing that I care a lot about. And if I put weight behind it, then like the other person is going to know that I'm bringing that in. So I think that was really important. I think also gaining a little bit of perspective has been really helpful. Um, I think with student government in particular, it's really easy to get super wrapped up in it. It feels all consuming. And so I think having really, really good friends, having friends with distinctly different interests has been incredibly important to me. Like friends who don't care at all about student government, which you can find a lot of them at UNC and I think at most universities, has been incredibly important because if you get lost in your own world, I think you lose a lot of perspective. I think you can take yourself too seriously. Like I said, it's a double edged sword. Um, and so I think sort of like having friends who can ground you and friends that you can ground as well as you don't get like lost in your own little universe.
How have you been able to nurture relationships with a bunch of diverse people? I know, especially being in a bunch of different areas in the positions that you hold probably help. But if someone is struggling to maybe meet new people, what piece of advice would you give them to be able to get out of their comfort zone and meet maybe their new best friend?
Hmm. Honestly, go places that will make you talk. Like I think some of the most difficult advice that I get is people are like, "Oh, just strike up a conversation, like go and start chatting." But like obviously, if you're feeling anxious about chatting to a new person, that's not going to happen. So go to places that are like a little bit more structured. Like go to club meetings or first year experiences that are going to force you to like partner up and do an icebreaker activity. It's super super painful, but I think it's a lot more comfortable to have some of those conversations when somebody else is providing the structure for you. Like I think that is huge. If somebody else can sort of facilitate that initial discomfort, I think that can be really helpful. Like with RESPC, part of what happened my first year was very much like come to this meeting and we're going to make you talk to new people, like come to this meeting and you're going to walk away with the contacts of a few people, and that's how you start sort of building relationships. I also think like I had this fear, it's a very deep fear, especially freshman year, of being annoying, of like bothering people, but everybody is looking for friends. Like that is a huge thing that I think I forgot freshman year is like everybody's overwhelmed, everybody's looking for sort of that connection, and if you try and like drive a connection with 10 different people, you could fail with 9 out of 10, but you're going to succeed with at least one. And so I think sort of having that mindset is also really helpful.
I was reading this book today. It's called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday.
Mhm.
There's a specific passage in here that I just pulled up, a note that I highlighted. And the book basically talks about how to see obstacles as opportunities and how to reframe a lot of the stuff, or at least that's what the first part of the book has been about. It's about shifting your perspective. And one of the things that Ryan Holiday talks about in this book, especially the passage that I just read, was I don't know the person particularly, but there's this guy named George Clooney, who he was in Hollywood and whatnot. I guess I'm assuming movie star. Maybe this is ignorance for me. I don't know. I don't watch a lot of movies, but he he was basically saying about how he kept getting rejected
Mhm.
from all of the auditions that he had. And I'm just going to read the passage of the stuff because the quote right at the end is the thing that I highlighted. And I thought that it was very important. And I'll add more on that. So it says George Clooney spent his first years in Hollywood getting rejected at auditions. He wanted the producers and directors to like him, but they didn't. And it hurt. And he blamed the system for not seeing how good he was.
Mhm.
This perspective should sound familiar. It's the dominant viewpoint for the rest of us on job interviews when we pitch clients or try to connect with an attractive stranger in a coffee shop. We subconsciously submit to what Seth Godin, author and entrepreneur, refers as the tyranny of being picked.
Mhm.
Everything changed for Clooney when he tried a new perspective. He realized that casting is an obstacle for producers too. They need to find somebody, and they're all hoping that the next person to walk in the room is the right somebody. Auditions were a chance to solve their problem, not his. That line at the end, auditions were a chance to solve their problem, not his, I feel like is super impactful because it goes to show, especially if we're talking about friendships or whatnot, or meeting new people, like you just said, everybody wants a new friend. And if you reframe your mindset to, I'm not I'm not like scared or whatever to go and talk to somebody else. I actually, if anything, I'm helping them out by
Mhm.
being the bigger person and just starting to talk to them and reframing that perspective. I feel like that lets go of a lot of the fear of like, what if they don't like me? It's like, okay, like that's okay. It's fine. Just go out and start talking to the people. And maybe you'll meet the person who really like actually is a good fit for you. Because at the end of the day, I mean, like if the person didn't want to be talking to you and they might not have been a good fit for you anyways. It's like why force something if you like why go out of your way and force something even more if the person's not reciprocating the energy that you have.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a huge thing in college too, because I think people have all these ideas of like, I have to do A, B, and C, and if A, B, and C aren't right for me, like everything's ruined. But I think odds are you end up in A, B, and C and you hate it. Like I think you can essentially get yourself into most rooms if you decide you want to be there bad enough. But that doesn't mean it's going to be fun. Like you'll show up and you're like, oh, this is terrible. Like I've made a huge mistake. I'm not going to do this. Like I thought I wanted to be, oh my gosh, my freshman year, I was like, I'm going to be an econ major. I'm going to be an econ major and then I'm going to be a consultant and I'm going to make $1 million and be so happy and so rich. And I took econ 101 and I hated it, Jack. I was like, oh, this is not for me. Like I could do it. I made it through the class, passed the class. I'm sure I could have made it through an econ degree. But I would have been miserable. I would have been miserable the whole time. And I think that's an easy thing to lose sight of and definitely something I still like struggle with and I think most people do. No, I really like that passage. Okay, I'll read it. It's gonna be my first self-help book.
I think, yeah, I mean, your point exactly. I was about to say, I think this is why so many people change their majors. They go into college with a strict idea of, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, and this is exactly what I want to do.
Mhm.
And then they get hit with something immediately, whether that's first week, like I did, where I got super homesick and whatnot. And then
Yep.
I eventually switched up a bunch of things and found stuff that I was more passionate about. But some people get smacked in the face with, I don't want to say smacked in the face with reality, but it's like you come in with somewhat of a plan and then something goes wrong. That's
Mhm.
something that I've already noticed, whether that's starting this podcast or really life in general. Something is bound to go not to plan.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to bounce back and kind of figure out what you're doing. And that's kind of just allowing yourself to have those moments where you fail. I like to view failure nowadays as more as just feedback. Like, okay, like good information, let's move forward. That actually is part of what the obstacle is the way is talking about,
Mhm.
which is fun. I sometimes I just find books and I just keep talking about them,
Yeah.
especially if I'm reading them. But that's why I think a lot of the thing is so impactful. But it's being able to just say, all right, like I didn't do super well in this,
Mm.
but now I'm gonna do better now because I have this experience. I'm gonna go out and find something else that I'm passionate about. That's why I've spent so much time. What people don't see a bunch is, I mean, I've said it a little bit, but I haven't shared it with you. But I've spent like years now meditating and
Mm.
reflecting on things to try and figure out exactly what it is that I want to be doing, or how I can make decisions on certain things, or who I should reach out to, or stuff like that,
Mhm.
to where I always have some sort of a framework for myself to be thinking about what I really want next. And then that's why I also experiment with so much stuff, because if you experiment with a bunch of different things, then you're able to try a whole bunch of stuff and figure out what's going to work, what doesn't work for you. That's why I think that's a big thing for me, is being able to obviously get into some habits, but then
Mhm.
switch up the stuff, because nothing's ever going to be perfect. So almost giving yourself that discomfort on purpose and switching the stuff up, it'll help you just kind of, adapt, become a little bit more adaptable, maybe coachable.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Moving forward a little bit here, you have a lot of stuff going on. How do you prioritize your time, and what does your time management look like? Are you using a calendar, or you writing a to-do list? What's going on here, Becca?
I am a Google Calendar fan through and through and through. I love my Google Calendar. Like, I don't know. It's the best. It's the best, which I hate. Like that sounds so annoying, but it really helps me sort of coordinate what I'm doing. It helps me visualize because I think it's really easy to say yes to things in an isolated like experience, right? Like if somebody says, "Oh, are you free for lunch on Thursday?" It's so easy to be like, "Yeah, of course." But if I can have a visual plan of my week, it's like, "Oh no, I think the lunch on Thursday will actually send me over the edge." Like I can't do that. Um, I have a friend who introduced me to the idea of kind of like schedule blocking. Um, and she's a master's student here, I think, doing like exercise and sports science. And she has blocks in her day where it's like, here's the block where I'm doing this extracurricular activity, and then here's the block where I'm doing all of the stuff for my master's. So I think one thing that I really struggled with, especially when work started to pick up, was I would sit down and be like, oh, perfect, I have 3 hours to work, but that 3 hours was completely disorganized. And so it has helped me to say, like, yes, I have 3 hours to work, but hour one is going to be for just this history paper, and I'm not going to look at anything else. I'm not like, I'm going to close everything else, going to close all my tabs, because I'm definitely the kind of person where if I feel like I have a lot to do, I'll sort of like anxiously flip back and forth, and I end up looking at a ton but not getting anything done. And so I think that's been really helpful, like definitely blocking out my calendar. I also like have workout blocks on my calendar, and I haven't been as good as I want to be this semester, which I guess is always the case, but like I have all my classes as solid blocks, so I plan around them. But a thing that have found very helpful is saying, like, okay, I'm going to block off this period, and I'm going to have to schedule around this day so that I do some sort of exercise on this day. So that's also been really, really helpful. I think like honestly like an Outlook calendar where like you're sending invitations to people so you can confirm that you're all going to be there. Running like systems has been helpful. So like I use my UNC Zoom account in a pretty structured way. Like I have reoccurring meetings for all of the different things that I'm involved in. So I have a link available, and it sounds pretty minute and like I don't know, small in the grand scheme of things, but just having those systems in place where like when I need something, it's there and I know exactly where to look for it is really helpful as well. Um, and I think sort of this comes with practice. But one of the best pieces of advice that I got my freshman year from an upperclassman was that one of the biggest distinguishing factors between succeeding, like being able to do what you want to do and not being able to do what you want to do in college, is just committing to showing up. Like I think that we are it in a time and a space and an age where there are so many demands being made on us, that one of the worst things that you can do and one of the easiest things to do is to overpromise and underdeliver. And so when that friend shared that piece of advice with me and he was like 90% of this is just showing up when you are supposed to show up, it made things feel a lot more manageable. Like it is better to show up to a meeting and say like, "Hey, I haven't been able to spend as much time as I wanted to looking at this, but I'm still here and I want to talk about it with you," is better than like saying you'll be at a meeting and then having to cancel last minute. Like it's okay to show up without being fully fleshed out in your thoughts. People just want you there and they want your energy there. And I think that has made sort of the mountain of work feel a lot more manageable. And one thing I think that I'm working on and still like continue to hope to improve on is delegating. I think that's a huge part of being in leadership, is finding people on your team that you can delegate to with full confidence. And I'm definitely like a little bit of a control freak. Like I like to see the work that's being done. I like to be involved with it. And so I think letting go of that a little bit and empowering people around me, is another thing that has helped work feel a lot more manageable.
I also use Google Calendar to a little bit of an extreme, honestly.
Yeah.
I started off at school and
Hmm.
just threw my classes in there, and it's like reoccurring, it's fine. Over the years, I've noticed for my productivity specifically, if I start throwing literally everything that I could possibly think of in the calendar, and then to your point, just showing up, if it's on the calendar, I'll be attending the event.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing is because you can send reminders, you can have notifications pop up, which I have like all my notifications silenced at this point, except for a
Hmm.
few things because it just keeps me off my phone. That's a big productivity killer going
Yeah.
on your phone. But I've got tips on that. You could grayscale your phone or do other stuff, but that's interesting. Sorry, side tangent. I spent now over years and plus like that just deleting social media and committing to not using my phone. So it's odd having it, but that's besides the point. If
Uh-huh.
you put stuff in your calendar, then I feel like it can show up. I actually wrote an entire blog on this. I should probably show myself the thing actually, honestly. Let's see what I wrote on some of the stuff. But I wrote an entire blog post on increasing productivity with digital calendars. And I think putting stuff in your calendar and simply, like you said, just show up. This is exactly what I said. And this is quoted from my own blog. I said, I treat everything in the calendar like it's one of my classes. I show up and get it done. I said, I've noticed this. I noticed that this works for me because it has simplified my life. There's no more what should I do and what should I do this because I have a plan that tells me exactly what I need to do at a certain time.
Yeah. Do you do like I've seen friends, and I don't do this, but would love your thoughts on it, who will say from 3:15 to 4:15 complete this assignment for this class. Like will you do it to that degree level?
Not exactly. I have blocks though that are just labeled like schoolwork.
Okay.
And I'll have that be reoccurring for certain days. And usually I have certain times where I will be open,
Mhm.
just have nothing planned, like right after a class. And usually this semester I have a statistics class on Mondays and Wednesdays. And then I have nothing after that for classes or usually anything else. And usually that's me immediately doing the statistics homework.
Mhm.
I'm trying this semester to just immediately do schoolwork as soon as possible. So it means if I have nothing to do and I'm in this schoolwork block, I'll try and work even more ahead. I used to just complete entire courses if the stuff was open, but I can't do that anymore because
Yeah.
of the fact that they closed a lot of it off. So I don't know if that's because they were warned that I was in the class and I just complete it really fast, or if they just don't do it that way. So it's unfortunate,
Yeah.
honestly. That's
Um
attack on the productivity.
I have a friend, and I've seen her do it, and I really want to try it because I think this is something, that comes with sort of like the extracurricular involvement. Is like sometimes my classes fall by the side, which is crazy because I'm a student, like I'm here to get my degree, and so I think one thing that she does, and you doing your work immediately after class reminded me of it. But she will go to lectures and then leave the lecture and voice record herself summarizing what she just learned, and I think Do you have a blog post about that? Like, have you?
No, but I'm about to.
Okay, okay.
I'm about to look into that so much. I'll give you a little bit of credit there.
Thank you, thank you. Give it to her name's Willow, but and I think that is something that I want to do more of is like trying to regurgitate whatever it is that I just learned back out to myself so I understand it. Oh my gosh, you know what's been a game changer? I'm not at Willow's level yet, but my iPad has been everything to me. I didn't have like I was my roommates had them freshman year and they like brought me over to the dark side and having my iPad and handwriting my notes. Like I know my parents are cheering somewhere, but like doing that has been everything, especially because I am like an existential multitasker in the worst way. Like people think they're good at multitasking, almost no one is, right? I said this before, but you're doing two things at once. You're sitting in class and you're writing a terrible email and both things are like at 50%. And so having like I'm not my handwriting is terrible, so I'm just never gonna be like a notebook person. But having an iPad and just like closing everything else down is the only accountability trick that I have found that works really well for me. Like my phone is always on DND, but like I don't get any text notifications on my iPad. Like really shutting all of that stuff down, having a platform that I like UNC has a Microsoft access for all students. I use OneNote for everything. Having something like that has been really, really helpful. And I've started to get a lot more out of my classes because of it. I will say I have one professor who's like a no tech classroom, and I'm learning the most in his classroom right now. So it's probably a sign that I should drop the iPad as well and like use my notebook. But I think the iPad feels a little bit more manageable for me right now, just 'cause, like I can interface it with my computer more easily.
I like that. It reminded me of a couple of things. I mentioned this in a podcast that I don't know when it's going to be out, but I filmed it the other day. I want to show you this so bad. Okay. I'll even put my phone in color for this.
Oh,
There's this
thank
thing
you.
called the learning pyramid, and basically what it is, hopefully this shows like correctly for you, but I'll describe it to you. So it's like a pyramid here. I don't
Mhm,
know if it's backwards or not for you, but at the bottom, it basically runs through retention rates. Okay. So it's like at this top, it's 5% is like whenever you're hearing somebody speak about it, like a lecture. Then
mhm,
it goes all the way down, like reading, audio, demonstration, all the way down to teaching others. And a hack that I've tried this, I do it for some of my classes every now and then, but I usually do it for outside whenever I want to study or learn things like this book. What I'll do is I'll go to a classroom and I'll either take like a lecture or a course online or just be finished reading some of this book. And then I will fake teach a class. Now, it sounds like a little crazy because there's no one in the room
uh-huh,
and we have glass windows, like even in the room where I'm in right now, where people can see into you. And I will fake teach the entire class, like write everything out on the board that I just did. I'm like, all right, guys, like today we're learning about, I don't even know,
yeah,
like
yeah,
I took it, I just take sometimes I just want to learn random stuff. So I'll go on YouTube and just look up whatever it is, lecture, and then just learn it. And then I'll write the stuff out so I know it. Cause that's how I looked into more just random stuff that I feel like I could just like utilize that would be
mhm,
useful for me to know for whatever it is, productivity, focus. I look into a lot of that stuff, but it ends up being, I don't know, I took some like neuroscience lecture and I don't know any of that. I'm an entrepreneurship major
uh-huh.
with a sales minor. I have nothing to do with that. I did horrible in science in high school, but I go out, watch the lecture, take the handwritten notes on my iPad. There you go.
Yep,
You're onto
yep,
something. And then I go and literally fake teach the thing and write all the stuff out. And now I actually know, like I know that lecture. I can actually probably go back and speak to you on it. I don't want to keep doing that because if I do it, then I'll look like a fool if I don't know anything.
uh-huh.
But I now know the basics of some of the neuroscience stuff. So
Nice.
if I if you guys ever need anything, I'm your guy.
Med
Maybe
school?
not, but
Are you going to med school? Are you switching it up?
Nah, no, unfortunately not. I mean, there is some stuff. I am in the science building right now, and they do have some stuff on a whiteboard. Looks like the endocrine system, and I don't know anything that's going on there. So
Oh, sort of tangential, like not even tangential, but I don't think that college students spend enough time speaking out loud, like in a presenting fashion. Like I really, really, really believe this. And I think part of it is like I had such like opportunity to do that in high school. But I think that there are so many people who are just so smart who don't get to hear themselves talk out loud, who can't do what you're describing, who can't regurgitate the information that they have in their minds. And so I think doing that kind of thing, like I will do that before Zooms. Like I will sit in my chair and I will practice saying what I know I need to say because it just like there's so much comfort and security in it. Like I think a lot of what people's fear is in these like I don't know, high stress situations is not trusting themselves. But like if you listen to yourself do it, 10 minutes before, you should have 100% confidence that you can do it again. Um so I respect that. I know you're doing it to, go to med school and be a neuroscientist, but I do think that like people should spend time, like even if your classes don't at all lend themselves to public speaking or presentations, spend time like getting comfortable listening to your own voice, and taking people like through a story essentially. Because if you can do that, like if you can do that in front of a group of people, I don't think there's anything that you can't do. If you can articulate yourself about neuroscience while being an entrepreneurship major, like that's huge. That opens up like an entirely new world for you. So I think that's sick. I think more people should do that. I think that's very cool.
I think just learning and challenging yourself randomly, things like that,
Yeah.
that pushes you along in different areas of your life, and you're able to improve yourself more holistically rather than just in a certain area. Because it's great to be really good at some things, but sometimes I feel like you can be really good in something like really, really good, and that's cool. But then you'll be like scared to death to go and speak in front of a class. I only say that because that's what a lot of people are. And the only way that I was able to overcome that, because I was that person, I was paranoid of going
Mhm.
up in front of a class. And now I have an entire class that's dedicated specifically to public speaking. It's just called Pitching Startup Ideas. I have it every Monday, and we just pitch ideas. That's it. That's the whole thing. You have to speak in front of people. And I just switch up my idea all the time, just specifically to try and come up with something random. I think, do you have any public speaking tips? I mean, you did debate and everything. Do you have anything that would be really useful for people, you think?
Slow down. You're always talking too fast. I say that after I've spoken incredibly quickly for the past however long
Mhm.
we've been talking, but um, slow down. Um, Move your eyes with every thought. So every time you finish a thought, that's when you should be moving your eyes. Your hands should stay down, which feels really uncomfortable, but like I can't really show it on Zoom, but like bouncing hands are really distracting. And tell a story. Yeah, no, that's the best way to speak. This is how you do all your public speaking. Um, but yeah, tell a story. I think storytelling is really comfortable because especially if you're telling a story about yourself, like that feels like the kind of thing that you can be in charge of, right? Like you were talking about giving these neuroscience lectures, like telling a story that leads with personal experience is the easiest way to then transition into something that feels different, right? The thing that's going to feel the most comfortable is your own story, and I think that's a good launching point. Um yeah, I think practice too, which is so unfortunate because it feels really awkward, but practice is really important. And getting up in front of people and finding opportunities to do that is huge. I think a good way to do it is speaking up in class, which is really scary, but I think it's sort of the most practical way for students to get public speaking is to get used to speaking up in classes, which isn't always doable. But I do think that it is like a very good way to kind of get more comfortable with the vulnerability of speaking.
One thing that I always think of nowadays is the way that your body language is.
Mm,
If you can like open up your body, you can't really see it too much, but like basically specifically like open up your chest and like make yourself be like almost bigger in a sense. I think that gives you some confidence to be able to speak more fully, especially if you pair that with breathing in and deeper like and slowing down. Slowing down just comes with all of your filler words get taken out whenever
mm,
you learn how to pause. That's something that I noticed, whether that's speaking or podcasting like this. I try, after having to edit myself all the time, I realized how much I say different filler words. And now I'm so mindful of it to where I try my best to not say any filler words at all. And I just pause. I noticed that too today. Sometimes I did speak a little bit quickly, like you said, but that usually comes to me if I'm trying to fit in, almost I'm trying to rush stuff.
hmm
But if I can just sit back and just realize it's okay, you can pause. It's
Yeah.
fine. No one's like, there's no one like counting on you to say stuff really quickly.
Yeah, my downfall is I get really excited, and when I get really excited, I talk so quickly, and I know this about myself. So I think you're right, just being very, very conscious of what you're saying. Also, to the point of speaking up in class, like I can't tell you how many times I've answered things wrong in class. Nobody is going to remember in a week. And it's impossible, impossible, impossible to recognize that when you're in the moment. Um, but just like try and think of a time when somebody in one of your classes last week said something and you're like, oh, that was so wrong and so dumb. You can't do it. You can't do it. And if you can, that's impressive, but you can't. And so I think that's another thing where it's like, it's okay if you speak too quickly. It's okay if you stumble. It's okay if you're wrong. Nobody's going to remember it in a week. And I think that's comforting.
All right, I want to round this out a little bit more. Is there any specific advice that you would like to give to undergrads who are looking to excel more? And are there any sort of resources that you think, like books or podcasts or whatnot, that you would point them in that sort of direction to be able to learn some of the stuff that you might give in advice?
I would say write things down a lot more than you think you need to. I don't think this is true for everyone. Um, but like I mentioned, I can get pretty excited and I can let that momentum carry me. And so when I'm saying write things down, I mean just like free form journaling can be incredibly helpful. I'm not good at it. I don't have the routine of journaling in the way that I want to, in a way that I think is really beneficial for a lot of people, but I don't think you need to do that in order to get the benefit of journaling. So just like stream of consciousness writing can help you, I think, identify things that you can always identify when you're just in your head. Um, I would say prioritize your friends. Prioritizing your friends is really, really important in college. I think there's very little that you can do in terms of extracurriculars that will compensate for not having a good foundation. And I think I got lost in that a little bit sophomore year. I think I was prioritizing all of this like grind culture, wanting to do the most in everything. I would just felt like very disconnected from a lot of my friendships. And so taking a step back and being like, do I know what's happening in my friends' lives right now? Is something that I would definitely recommend. I I wish I had specific like self-help books to point to. I will say in terms of books, like I love fiction. Like I'm a big, big, big fiction reader. And if you like books like that, I would just recommend reading before bed. Like even if it's pulling up like something on a I have my Kindle, I have my Kindle right here actually. I love this. I've also recently like found that almost any book can be found online for free in the PDF version because I don't, I'm not books are expensive. So like that is really huge for me and it's also been huge because I found that like reading a physical book in bed can be really annoying because I want my lights off but I also want to be able to read. So reading on like even my computer sometimes if I can only get it on my computer is really huge for like calming my mind down. So I would definitely recommend that. Getting outside once a day is something that is huge for me. Like even if it's not crazy exercise, like my friend and I will go and walk to coffee, and that alone is like enough to really center my day. Um, I'm trying to think of podcasts. Not a huge like I like podcasts that make me laugh. I like lighthearted podcasts. I think those are fun. So if anybody like Brooke and Connor makes a podcast, it's very unserious, but it just makes me laugh. I think for more like day-to-day things, plugging your phone in across the room is the best thing that you can do. And I'm so bad at it. But like when I do it, those are my best mornings. Like the best way to fall asleep because like if I have my phone in the morning, I mean, it's just the worst way to start your day. Like, you don't need that many hits of dopamine at like 7 a.m. That's crazy. Like, and I think figuring that out is also really, really helpful. Um, yeah, I would say those are all like important things to do. I mentioned this earlier, but just like find people that you respect. Like, not people that are the most accomplished, but just people who seem to be doing life in a way that you want to emulate. Like I can look to people who are I don't know, just like the most outstanding in whatever their preferred area of focus or study is. And I can look at their lifestyle and look at like what gets them up in the morning and realize that that could not be further from my truth. So why would I go after that? And I think realizing that like the best examples we have are in our lives already has been very grounding. I think not always looking to these, I think especially now there's like all this stuff online about people who are incredibly incredibly productive all the time amazing. But like look to the real people whose lives you can see playing out in real time, and that's where you can find the most realistic reflection of like what you want and how to get there. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every time you try to do something. Like, I know you're an entrepreneurship major, but you don't have to entrepreneur every time you want to do something cool. Like it's okay to copy a little bit. Like it's okay to take information from the people who have come before you and build on that. And I think failing to do that when you have the chance just leads to a lot of excessive pressure and expectations for yourself that are impossible to fulfill. That was kind of like roundabout. I hope some of that is useful. No, I'm just thinking.
Thought it was some great advice.
Okay.
I have last question here for you.
Yeah.
What fiction book should I go and read whenever I'm not reading nonfiction? Right before bed. Go for it.
Wait,
Give me a
wait, wait.
book
Let me
off the
pull.
top of your head.
Oh, okay, The Overstory. But I'm also pulling up my book list right now so I can give you more. The Overstory is so good. The Overstory is
What's it about?
it's this like it's like 10 different stories and it's about with 10 different protagonists, but every single one of them relates to a tree in a very specific way. And the no, listen. The prose are just beautiful. And I'm a big nature person too. And so the way that like each of the characters tells their story through the motif of the tree, this sounds so like no, it's phenomenal. You should read it. But let me see if I can find my actual. Let's see. Let's see. What did I read most recently? Oh, write down what books you're reading too. I think that's really good. Because you'll lose um yeah, you'll lose your sort of reference. Oh, memoir. That's what I read. If I'm not reading fiction, the only nonfiction I read is memoir. I think that's a really good way to sort of like learn
Mm.
about values. Yeah, so let's see. I read A Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela this summer, which was really, really like amazing. Um, oh, A Gentleman in Moscow was so good. That's fiction. Oh, historical fiction. I am a history major, but historical fiction is fun. Um, yeah, I keep a running list of book recommendations that I've received from other people and who sort of like gave them to me, which I also think is a very fun way to read because it's fun to read a book thinking about another person and like why they recommended that book to you.
I love it. I'll listen to this again and maybe check out that book and let you know what I think. Because I'm always reading new books. And then usually I'm starting a new one midway through if it's not that good. So maybe you'll just get a text and it'll say, it was all right.
Okay.
Didn't finish in
I
parentheses.
don't want to hear any of that. I don't want to hear any of that. Yeah, and if you have any book recommendations, you can send them my way for Spain. So I have a reading list.
Oh,
I have a reading list going.
now you're officially going to Spain.
I'll keep you.
I didn't know it only took me
I'll keep you
to convince
posted. I'll
you.
keep you posted. We'll see what happens.
All right, there we go. All right, well, Becca, I really enjoyed talking to you here. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a really great time. Super, super cool podcast.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Exceptional Undergrads. If you found inspiration in today's episode, head on over to our website, exceptionalundergrads.com, and check out some of the show notes. We're always looking for new undergrads to feature in future episodes. If you'd like to be featured, apply on our website under the Apply Here page. We'll review the application and get back to you. And as always, stay exceptional.